All right, we will call this meeting to order, the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee. I'm John Strand, your chair. We have a few members still trailing in, but we might as well get started because all the rest of you have agendas or schedules too. So we'll go on the table, start with Bruce and introduce ourselves, if we could.
Bruce Grubb, City of Fargo Administration.
Mike Williams, Public Representative.
Greta Graymig, Public Representative.
James Hand, Fargo Public Schools.
Dave Beats, Fargo Park District.
Chad Brusso, Cass County Electric.
Becky Majerus, City of Fargo Facilities.
Shauna Radnick, City of Fargo Inspections.
Brenda Derrig, Assistant City Administrator, City of Fargo.
And Sean, are you online?
I am, yes.
We have Sean from Excel online with us too. Thank you for joining us as well. All right, going forward, is there any change or addition to the agenda? If not, I'd call for a motion just simply to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes of the March 18th meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make that motion.
I would second
Moved and
Becky's
seconded.
motion.
Okay, Becky and Bruce, any changes or additions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? They're okay then and posted. Every year, we always look forward to updates on the cleanup, and Bruce has reminded us that that'd be a great topic to update us all on in the community. So Bruce, I'll let you introduce the next topic, please.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Strand. This is kind of a near and dear thing to me between solid waste utility and the landfill. I spent a good part of my career working in this arena. So I asked Scott Olson if he would be willing to give this committee, the SRC, a summary report on cleanup week that just ended about a month ago, 2025. It's really a popular annual event with the public. And over the years, the city's incorporated many diversionary programs to keep as much as possible out of the landfill. And so I thought it would be interesting. Scott did this a year ago as well, and I thought it was great, so I asked him to do it again. So Scott, with that introduction, I'll turn it over to you if you're ready to roll.
I am ready. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
For those who don't know, I'm Scott Olson, the Director of the Solid Waste Department for the City of Fargo. Sadly, my compadre, the recycling supervisor in the department, Jen, came a little ill, so she had to skip out on this, but I wanted to give her a shout out anyway because she always helps, and she's the main media contact for the whole cleanup event, so she takes care of quite a bit during that. So we'll just jump in. What we'll be talking about today is a 2025 recap, some rules and acceptable and not acceptable items, challenges that we have on the street, some challenges with recyclables specifically, diversion methods that we use. I'll touch base quick on our residential transfer station. That's a pretty cool program. And one thing I thought would be interesting for this group is the disposal at the landfill, and follow that up with any questions that someone has. But if I'm going along and you have a question, feel free to stop me. Pretty informal.
What's PE mean?
Professional engineer.
That's what I was guessing, but okay. It's on his title, I think. I'm learning something already. Thank you.
Thank you. So to recap our event this year, it was the weeks of May 5th through the 9th and 12th through 16th. This is a collaborative effort between the Solid Waste Department and Public Works. This year we contracted 3 private haulers. With all the equipment and manpower, we use about 150 total people on the street for those 2 weeks. This year we had 1,443 tons of material that we collected. About 1,400 tons was on the curbside. That was about 722 loads. And 45 tons was delivered to the residential transfer station during those 2 weeks. Of that, we collected 35 tons of tires and 131 tons of metal collected on the curb. Here's just a quick graph to show you kind of how we've trended over the last 6 years. Now, a couple of things to note, and this one, why it's kind of a neat graph to show, is 2020 was obviously the COVID time, so we had probably some a little less participation that year. And then 2021 is when we opened the residential transfer station. So you can see in 2019, before those 2 events took place, we were at about 2,000 tons. That was pretty historically average. And now we're down roughly 500 tons a year. And I think a lot of that has to do with that residential transfer station, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Some of the general rules that we have for this event is it's the same day as your recycling day. We like to have items out on that, on or before that collection day by 7 a.m. That's when crews will start rolling around. Limited to 2 appliances each for each household. Limit of 4 tires. Electronics, stains, paints, and all those other somewhat hazardous materials. We do not collect during this event. We do encourage everyone to bring those to household hazardous waste, just like they could year-round. We don't like to have a lot of building materials. Now, when we say that, that's always a confusing one every year, because if you have a 2x4 in your garage that you've been waiting to get rid of, that won't quite fit in your garbage can, you can set that aside and we will pick that up. If you tear down an entire deck and put that on the curb, someone will get it, but it will probably be charged. And then brush is collected by the forestry department during those 2 weeks as well. A couple reminders that we like to put out there. Separate items so they're somewhat orderly on the curb. We do have multiple crews going around that are looking for tires. We're a crew looking for metal, and then we have many crews just gathering the waste items. So if they're all separated in nice orderly piles, then it's easier for those separate crews to get to them and not have to rummage through everything just to find a piece of metal. We would like to have everything in a disposable container that keeps everything nice and tidy on the boulevard. And again, if you have an overly excessive pile or materials that are not accepted, we will collect it, but it will likely be charged. We don't police these things too often, especially the one question we get a lot is how, I'm going to be gone. How can I have this out just the night before my collection day? And, we don't drive around looking for people that have things out 2 or 3 days prior to. It's mostly complaint-based. If it's out for 2 weeks and we have neighbors that are calling saying, we got a problem, this is really ugly, people are rummaging through it, leaving garbage everywhere, we will come get it early and you will be charged like you would any other time of the year. All of the information that I've shared here is available on our website during the cleanup week on that page. So feel free to look at that anytime you want or direct anyone who asks questions to that website. Some of the challenges, now these are some of my favorite slides. Again, we touch on excessive piles. So this requires a lot of additional resources during an already hectic time. When we have excessive piles, we don't like to have our crews on your street for too long, just like the residents don't like to have us on their street for too long. So we like to keep those piles manageable so we can get in and out as fast as we can. Again, the non-sorted debris piles requires additional time, people having to shuffle through waste just to find metal or just to find tires. And then, again, the piles placed at the curb too early. Neighbors don't like it. Again, we don't want to police it. We don't want to have people driving around for a month prior to the event just to see if anyone's got stuff out there. So try and stay as close to your, typical or your collection day as you can, and all will be good. Now we get to see a couple of excessive piles. So one rule of thumb that I like to point people to is we don't have.
Scott,
go ahead.
Scott,
Go ahead,
I'm
John.
just 1 second. Sean, you may have to turn your phone on mute, or if somebody's online that we're getting some really interesting feedback. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Scott. All right, continue. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. One, general guideline I like to throw out there for people that call and say, well, I got charged $40 for cleanup week. I thought it was free. And we'd say, well, we take pictures of all the large and excessive piles, anything that we're going to charge. We do like to, take a picture of, show it to that resident if they have concerns or questions. If it seems excessive, then it probably is. So, see, this was a really good one. I don't know how someone pulls this out of one home, but that's a lot of material. Here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is a nice pile on the left that separated by items. You can see again, looks to be a small amount of wood back there, but it's probably just some planking that came from a small minor repair in their home. We will take that. That won't be any extra. And this allows crews to come in and guide their way through. If you have metal, they can get that and not have to rummage through waste. Tires, similar thing. So, and on the right, that's the other side of the story. So jumping just to recycling specifically, one of the issues that we have is that we like to have people do is separate items. Again, I keep harboring on, hammering on that point, but it is a big one, because if you look at the pile here, it's really hard for us as a city or the public works or even private contractors to go through and have to shuffle through that entire pile just to find something that we can divert from the landfill. Most of the time, a thing like this will just get picked up by a loader, and that means all the recyclables that could have gone into your blue bin that day are now just going to the landfill. So it's hazardous. There are contaminants that can happen when you have a pile like this. If you have anything that's recyclable like cardboard or plastic, especially cardboard, that gets rained on, that can get ruined, making it not recyclable anymore. Other wastes that are in these bags can leak out if they're there for a long period of time, thus, making that entire load basically just garbage. There is no recyclables there that we can use anymore. And the logistics too. For this reason, city has focused recycling efforts on easily distinguishable items such as metals and tires. Those are items that are large, they can be separated or picked out pretty easily. So that's where our efforts on recycling are really focused. Continuing with that, as I said earlier, we did recycle and collect over 130 tons of metal that are brought to recyclers here locally. And for the tires, we did take about 2,000 tires from the curbside. So all of that material, all those tires are brought over to our solid waste headquarters, as we call Solid Waste Central. And we do contract out a tire recycler to come and collect those and recycle them properly. Touching just quickly on our residential transfer station again, this is a program that started in 2021, and it is a year-round, free to City of Fargo residents to come in, and they can go into a safe environment that's indoors and drop off any type of household waste or recyclables. There we have separate containers all laid out and labeled for metal, cardboard, all-in-one recycling, batteries, tires, and on the tipping floor can just be the waste. In 2024, just a rundown of those numbers, we did take in sort of 1,200 tons of residential garbage. We recycled over 100 tons of metal, 24 tons of cardboard, and we're able to divert any of those paint stains, electronics, anything else over to HHW to the tune of about 50 tons. So all of that material is able to stay out of the landfill, source separated. One item that I wanted to touch on again was just the disposal at the landfill and some of the challenges and opportunities that we found this year. So some of the challenges that we have is we have about 250 to 300 trucks per day that go through that landfill. That's City of Fargo, other municipalities like West Fargo, Valley City, and private haulers that use our landfill that service commercial customers. So we're adding an additional 50-some trucks to that just with the cleanup weeks that we have. Some weather concerns, obviously now with cleanup week, we are managing additional waste and at additional locations, so we have to maintain basically 2 sites. And then staffing. We have shift work at the landfill. We work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then 7 to 1 on Saturdays. So most of our staff is on shift, and during those 2 weeks, we have all hands on deck. Every staff member at the landfill works 10 hours a day on Monday through Friday, and then they're still regularly scheduled on Saturdays. So some of the opportunities that we came up with this year was to kind of limit some of those challenges. We went through and evaluated and identified some areas in our West Landfill campus, so that's west of 45th Street. That is away from our main operations, which would be the 250 to 300 trucks per day on the East Campus. And we found areas as garbage breaks down over time. You can imagine that once it's sitting there for so long, it settles. We were able to find some areas in that West Campus where we are below our airspace capacity in those areas. And we thought, why not utilize that space, separate out those additional trucks, and reclaim that area? So we identified a couple locations and started that this year. The cool thing about that is we're adding new waste to an already existing site, and that's the side that has our gas collection system. So any waste that's a gas-producing waste that we collect during cleanup week, now we're able to capture that gas rather than allow it to go to the atmosphere. So it's a good opportunity for us with additional waste to utilize everything we have in our toolbox. And again, the residential transfer station is open year-round to residents for free. So it's another spot that's at the West Campus, so easy for people to locate and get to. Here's just a site, just a map that can show you that East Campus, east of 45th Street, that's where our main operations are. And the West Campus shows the residential transfer station in the bottom right corner there. And that is where our wood waste operations are currently going in our inert disposal site. So the area that you see in green is the area that we utilized this year to reclaim somewhat and bring that cleanup event trash, keeping them away from our normal traffic and in an area all by themselves. And then that little grayed out area up in the corner, that black box, that's going to be a spot that has settled over the years, probably about 10 or 12 feet. So we've reclaimed a lot of that, and now we'll have cleanup week space for many years to come. And that's right in the heart of our active gas collection system. So it's a good location. With that, I am available to take any questions.
Anybody have any? Michael? Is your mic on, Mike?
You guys did a great job. We had a neighbor that had excessive garbage, but he came back around a couple times, so thanks. On the new landfill site, so I know there's got a liner in there, so how long will it be before you'll do a gas collection system on that side? Yeah, I suppose you have to get to a certain level of use to do that, or what's your idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have, typically the way we want to do that and how we can start capturing gas is by closing part of the landfill. So anywhere that we close, like formally close, in cases that gas that's being produced, that's when we can start pulling it out of the atmosphere. Or pulling it out of the landfill, sorry. So if you do that a little too early before you close it, you can actually introduce air to that. And the higher the air content is on that, on the gas that you're collecting, the worse it is for the entire system. So we want to make sure that we close things first and then bring in the active gas system. So we are currently building the fourth cell of 8 over there. We have about 17 or 18 years left on that East Campus, and we will begin our first closure on that side next year. Yeah. So as we begin closing that, get those projects completed, then we'll focus on expanding the gas system to the east.
So that was before they redid the east side. That was the old landfill, and it wasn't buried very deep, but I heard that you could actually read newspapers from the 50s, so it wasn't decomposing very well. So this is a huge improvement over what was. So now that you got to start from scratch, are you changing anything from what you put in there compared to the west side campus?
No, so the west side, the bulk of that was Subtitle D regulated, and that's what we're continuing on the east side. The one thing that we're able to do with the east is obviously removing that old liability that was the garbage that was in there, and actually going about 20 feet deeper than what the garbage was. So we'll be able to get a lot more capacity in there and service ourselves in an area that we're already utilizing as a landfill. So that's beneficial. There's a couple operational things that we'll do a little differently. The cells are bigger, trying to make it so that we are less impactful to the public as we can be. A lot more landscaping that we're going to be doing, keeping up so we're good neighbors. So there's a few items that we're focusing on, but overall it's about the same design.
And Scott, I know that the residential waste stream is a component of the overall waste stream, but when you went from source-separated curbside recycling for residences to the co-mingled, didn't your recycling numbers go up quite drastically? So you can draw a conclusion that that was kept out of the landfill, possibly. Yeah. Didn't you see a spike in total tonnages for residential?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it doubled. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers for sure, but we are hovering around that 3,500 to 4,000 tons per year that we're recycling now. And back when it was source separated in separate bags, it was less exciting for people to have to do that, to sort it on their own and keep multiple bags and a smaller bin. So now with one large bin, they can just throw everything in there and not have to worry about that. So Yeah, we did see a pretty good increase. I don't know the exact percentage of that right now, but
Mr. Chairman, so Scott, we used to keep track of how many metric cubic feet per minute and stuff, and show the people how much you're making on that, methane. And I think you're selling it to XL Energy directly now. But do you guys show that anywhere on the website so you guys can brag about it a little?
yeah, there is, on our website, we do have an area on there for the renewable energies that does show kind of what we're pulling each day and any of the revenues that come from that.
They love to see the cash from trash.
Yeah, it is interesting, and we worked pretty hard over the last year or two to try to get that back into a real-time type. We struggled with that a little bit, but you're right, it's a popular thing to put out there, so.
It was fun. One of the local cartoonists put a deal out there where they said, had a methane tank and, time to draw the methane or something. And anyway, we gave one to
Time to
Byron
take out
Dorgan
the
because when
garbage.
when we opened the baling station, we had Byron Dorgan, Kent Conrad, and Earl Pomeroy, and Roger Johnson there at the opening. And I remember Denny was going, how did you get all these guys here? And said, boy, trash draws a lot of horsepower. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, Byron Dorgan's got one of those pictures. And he used to be able to show people in Washington, here's what they're drawing for methane and how much cash it was, because that real-time thing was kind of fun.
Wow, yeah.
But anyway.
I'm enjoying the nostalgia here at the table. And hearing Mike say today, cash from trash. I remember years and years ago, you were speaking somewhere, you were saying if it smells, it sells. Something like that.
That's right. It played in Great Britain. If we can smell it, we can sell it.
Anybody else have any feedback or questions for Scott? I just, from a citizen's perspective, I remember one time I had a situation where somebody put some furniture on the boulevard and I didn't have the ability to get rid of it. I didn't know how to get rid of it. And I'm sitting there thinking, how do my neighbors react to this? And I called solid waste. Pretty soon they send somebody over and send me a really, really, really reasonable bill to take care of all that junk out there that in the middle of the year, So people can get service that we don't always know about just by making a call.
Yeah, we do have call-in service, and we basically charge just what it costs us to come collect it and get rid of it. So there is no extreme fees. We have the staff, and we want to help.
Sean, online, any feedback or questions before we pass on to the next topic?
Nope, nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. Let's, any
Anything
quick
else?
for Scott?
I had a quick
Go
question.
ahead, Chad.
Mike, the cash for trash, is it that methane generator at the city of
Yes.
Fargo landfill that you're
Right.
referring to? Yeah, that was a
Yes.
project with Cass County Electric.
Yes, you guys I think that was the first agreement that we made that had an escalator built in. So when you started to charge more for electricity, we got more. That was a Bruce Grubb deal.
Yeah, we have our SCADA system on that generator to this day and monitor its output and
Yeah.
status. So, yeah.
A lot of good history. All right. Hey, Scott, thank you very much. This is really a good update and good for the community as well. And
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Tell Jen thanks as well. Hope she gets well.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
All right, Bruce, we'll let you introduce the next topic, if you would,
Yes,
please.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Strand and I were talking about the SRC a little bit, I suppose it's a couple of weeks ago, and just talking about, we've had some members that have had to withdraw from the committee, and we were talking about, pretty fortunate to have the 4 ex officio members at the table, because they're big players. XL Energy, Cass County Electric, Fargo Schools, Fargo Parks. And we were asking ourselves, have we given them the opportunity? Because this is a public meeting. I mean, it's broadcast and it's recorded, and it's an opportunity to disseminate some information to the public too. And so I reached out to all 4, and they all indicated that we'd take the opportunity if it was presented to us. And Chad Brousseau with Cass County Electric jumped first, and so he's prepared a presentation. And what we're talking about, obviously all 4 have sustainability efforts that they've already employed, and they have plans for moving forward. And with what's going on in DC and stuff like that, you're never quite sure. And so I thought it'd be good for us and the public to hear what your plans are looking forward, knowing what you know today. So chat.
Sounds good. I do have some, you can pass these around. If anybody wants one, I brought some copies of hours of sustainability report with me. So if you all want to take it, if not, then we'll take them back. Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Bruce. I'm going to start with just kind of an overview of Cass County Electric Cooperative, some statistics. I'm going to touch on technology a little bit that we use and then get into really the meat of it with our programs and services. I'm happy to visit. This can be real informal. If you have questions on any of these topics and you want to visit more than I have on here, please speak up. We can talk about it while we're on that slide. So Cass County Electric, our mission is pretty simple to say, but it's getting ever more challenging as the years go on. Our mission is to serve our members' energy needs with affordable and reliable electricity. Our core values in our industry, safety. Safety is always number one, first and foremost. Integrity, innovation, accountability, and community. As an electric cooperative, we were formed to serve the communities that we live and work in, so commitment to community is always at the forefront as well. So a little bit about us. We were founded in 1937. Originally our headquarters was in Kindred, North Dakota. We are now headquartered in Fargo. We are member-owned, not-for-profit. At the end of the year, any margins or excess revenue that we have gets allocated back to the members that purchase electricity from us and then retired in the form of capital credits. We are democratically controlled. We have a 9-member board that's elected from the membership at our annual meetings. We do serve all or parts of 10 counties in southeast North Dakota. Nearly 6,000 miles of line out there that we maintain, pretty evenly split between overhead and underground, as you can see there. Currently 96 full-time employees. In 2024, we sold just over 1.3 billion kilowatt hours. That's billion with a B. And coming off the 2023 Christmas Day ice storm, we actually set an all-time record reliability score in 2024 for Cass County Electric. Our average service availability index was 99.9953. So essentially, the average Cass County Electric member had power for 99.9953% of the year in 2024, which works out to about a 24.5-minute average outage time. Some of the technology we use at Cass County Electric to achieve those reliability numbers, we have a SCADA system, which essentially that is real-time monitoring of all of our substations and many devices and switches and breakers out in the field. Allows us to get real-time current, voltage, loading information, KW, and also reports potential outages by recording that fault current. Another piece of that SCADA system is a fairly new piece of technology called Flizzr. This is really automated outage restoration. So it communicates with that SCADA system, and when we do have an outage, if it's between two SCADA-enabled switches, those switches between talking to each other will determine where that fault is, open up on either side, isolate that fault, and then automatically close in other switches to reroute power and restore a portion of that outage. Now, we still have that problem section to address, which is where we'll dispatch the lineman to that problem, but it really narrows down the scope of that outage and gets as many people back on as quickly as possible. All those systems feed into our power control center. It's a 24/7 operation right in South Fargo at our office. Somebody's always at the helm monitoring the grid, what's going on. Advanced metering infrastructure. People think of metering, okay, yeah, it's what we use to get the meetings, right? So we can send you your electric bill. Well, today's metering infrastructure does a whole lot more than that. It also has two-way communication, so it can report into that outage management system which meters have power, which don't have power. Gives us voltage history on it if we have any issues where we may have low voltage concerns that our engineering department needs to address. Blink logging, just a lot more to it than just the traditional metering that you think of what those meters used to be capable of. I kind of touched on that outage management system that has basically our electrical engineering model and a little electrical connectivity. So it processes all the inputs from all these different technologies. So when we're in a outage event or large scale outage, it allows our dispatchers to determine where the problem may be and efficiently direct those line crews for service restoration. The IVR system, that's basically the automated phone system. During heavy call volumes, when you call into Cass County Electric, you may get that automated phone system, which is why it's important why our members keep their phone numbers up to date as well, because it will recognize your phone number where you're calling from, and will actually provide you some information if you are part of an outage or part of a known outage. And then part of our maintenance inspections now, we utilize drones, thermal cameras. We're always doing inspections, trying to tray ahead of it and ultimately prevent outages from occurring in the first place. So we currently just have over 59,000 members. We're going to cross the 60,000 service mark here at some point here soon. You can kind of see the split there between urban. We have a lot of apartments in the South Fargo area. You can see the rural farmsteads, commercial and industrial. An interesting thing about this graph, when you look at that, this is service count, but when you actually look at Cass County Electric sales for the year, it's pretty evenly split between residential and commercial, about 50-50. So here's again the area in green. These are the 10 counties that we serve all the parts of in southeast North Dakota. And then where we fit into the bigger picture with Minn Kota Power Cooperative. Minn Kota Power is our G&T. They are the generation and the transmission side of the cooperative. Cass County Electric is a distribution cooperative. We take it from the substation to the member's meter, and we manage the local grid here. Minn Kota's current power mix, 57% coal, 34% wind, 7% hydro off the Garrison Dam, and then 2% other, which is a mix of market purchases and some other smaller generators. You can see the geographical location on that map of all of our generation resources, the wind farms and the coal plants and the Garrison Dam. All of our resources are located right here in the state of North Dakota. We don't have any generation resources outside of our borders. So when we talk about that generation mix, we always like to talk about the difference between capacity and energy. So when we talk capacity, this is actually the nameplate of those generation resources. So if everything was producing 100% of the time, around the clock, that generation capacity is what that generation mix looks like. When you get to the end of the year and the actual energy produced or energy consumed, since some of these resources are more variable than others, the actual mix of actual energy produced is a little bit different. That's where you see the coal is a slightly larger chunk at 61% and the wind is slightly lower at 27%, just because of the variability nature of those wind resources. Minn Kota recently announced a new wind project that will be going up near New Rockford, North Dakota. It's a 370 megawatt wind farm that will be added to those generation resources that we just discussed. It will be owned and operated by PRC Wind, and Minn Kota Power will take all the energy off those farms through a purchase power agreement. Once Flicker Tail Power project starts, it'll start around 2027 and should be online by 2028. That will bring those resources to about 50% renewable or carbon-free that we looked at on that prior slide. Another project that I know you've seen in the news and has probably been talked about here at the SRC in the past is Project Tundra. Project Tundra is the carbon capture and sequestration project that's being evaluated out in Center North Dakota. Essentially to take all the flue gas, or the majority of the flue gas, off of those young coal plants and permanently store the CO2 underground. There's been no firm decision yet on Project Tundra. It continues to be an option on the table when we start looking at future power supply and what does our next generation of resources look like. CCEC has a robust demand response system or off-peak program. You may hear this referred to by different terminology: demand response, demand side management, off-peak. Essentially what it is for certain types of loads that can be voluntarily controlled or turned off during peak demand times for electricity, the member in turn can get a discounted electric rate. And these programs go a long way into helping us manage what can be a volatile power market and manage our resources effectively. So we currently have off-peak programs for firm electric heat. That'd be like your typical dual fuel. If you're out in the country and you have electric heat, maybe backed up by a propane furnace. Heat pumps, mini splits, water heating. We always refer to water heating as that battery in the basement. We can charge up your hot water, make sure you have hot water. Charge it during off-peak times, and then when we're on peak time, we can turn that water heater off and you still have that storage of hot water. Electric vehicles, they continue to grow in popularity. We have off-peak programs for them. A number of commercial accounts in town that have backup emergency generators. We can enroll those into the program and call on those generators during peak demand times. And then for our agricultural members, we have programs for irrigation and grain handling sites. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this graph. This kind of gives the big picture of how the demand response system interfaces with our generation resources. So on the left-hand column, you can see the megawatt rating of the different resources, and the solid dashed line on top, that would be if everything was producing 100%. We'd have 1,200 megawatts of generation capacity available. From the bottom on up, the blue line, the WAPA, that's the power off the Garrison Dam. Coyote, Young 1 and Young 2, those are the coal plants out in central North Dakota. And then the green on top is the wind. So you can see the variability of that wind depending on the time of day. So this chart is over a 2-day period, Saturday and Sunday in January, when we had those 20, 30 below temps, a bitterly cold day, peak demand day. The red dashed line is our system load, or I should say Minn Kota system load. And the solid line is actual load. The dashed line would be what the load is if we didn't control. So you can see starting on the left-hand side of that graph, our load was actually higher than what we had generation capacity for. So that difference there is being filled in by market purchases on the wholesale power market or the MISO market. You start to get around 7, 8 that morning, Minn Kota decided to initiate our demand response system, basically turning off those electric car chargers, turning off that electric heat, turning off those water heaters. And you can see that then brings that solid red line down into what we do have the generation capacity available to handle. So it prevents us from having to go out there and purchase power on what could be an expensive wholesale power market. Or in turn even prevents us from having to build a simple cycle gas peaking plant that we then have to fire up to meet that load. So it's an efficient way to manage the resources that we do have. And then kind of see over the 2-day period, the wind kind of ramps up, gets a little higher, and then goes back down. Again, kind of just the nature of that wind and that variability. And you can see that node up on the upper left. One of the things with the wind farms too is it gets to about 22, 23 below. Those wind farms have to lock out to basically protect themselves, to protect the fiberglass blades. So that was one of the reasons why wind wasn't available during that stretch. A lot of information here. It's a little busy slide. Does anybody have any questions on this before I move off this slide?
I do, Chad. I'm just curious, and you're talking a language that's pretty foreign to me sometimes, but how does this get affected when people start putting big, huge data centers into the system?
That's a good question. That's something we are studying, have been studying for some time. You start talking data centers on the 200 megawatt and up range. That could have a drastic impact on the market grid and the wholesale power market. It's one reason why we're not just going to put one in without doing our due diligence. Additional resources need to be made on infrastructure and generation resources. And just talking from the Minn Kota Cass County Electric perspective here, we are not going to do something like that and put that on the back of our existing legacy members. If a data center wants to come into the area, they are going to need to invest their dollars in those infrastructure resources and generation resources needed to serve that size of load. That's a 1-minute answer to a very complicated topic around AI and data centers.
But they're coming.
They're coming somewhere. It's just a matter of where and when.
Mm-hmm. And money talks. I'm guessing, it's a real enticing conversation, I'm guessing, for sub-governments to have such an injection potentially of money.
There's obviously like the big five, right? You got the Microsofts, the Googles, the Metas, the big players, and they do have capital, they do have money and spend to make these happen. It's actually been a national topic. They're going to come. I think we want them to be inside of our borders, inside the United States, but we have to do this responsibly so we don't sacrifice the reliability and the rates that we enjoy today. So they can be a benefit, and I think they can be a benefit for our existing ratepayers too, because that growth and that extra kWh sales, can allow us to absorb some inflationary pressure, some costs. But again, we just have to make sure we do it right and we study it, and because if you get it wrong, it could have a big impact.
Who else has questions? I have another one, but I'll let anybody else for the moment. Okay, how about coal plants? There's discussion about saving coal plants, closing coal plants over the years. How is it, are your coal electric producing plants affected in that conversation?
Yeah, there's been challenges, different regulations that those coal plants have had to meet over the years, the ones that have passed and stood. There's been some around CO2 that have not stood. Just looking at this graph, we defend those resources because, again, we want to keep that power reliable and we want to keep it affordable. Then we also got that third leg of the stool, sustainability. So there has been $425 million invested in emission controls and those coal plants over the years. So they are operating cleaner today than they ever have in the past. When you look at our region, the northern part, with the extreme weather, the extreme cold, we need something that's reliable and dependable and can run when it's 30 below. And there's pros and cons to all of these generation resources. And I shouldn't say the one, but one of the big pluses of that coal is just the stability and the resiliency of those plants. You have that physical pile of coal sitting at that plant. Even if mining operations gets interrupted, they have that fuel supply there and they can run for a week, even if mining operations are disrupted. But on the other side of it, the con, you have the emissions to deal with. So that's where a project like Project Tundra could come into play to capture the CO2 off the backside and permanently store it underground.
Bear with me, but the emissions in Project Tundra, I'm curious about this, isn't that kind of the whole approach to the carbon capture system is to extend the functionality of the coal operations? But now that there's less focus on coal and opening up, I don't know, is there less need or desire now, or appetite for carbon capture, being as the dynamic has changed?
Well, that's why, no final decision has been made on Project Tundra. It remains an option to deal with that carbon. We get to that point. The future of power supply, it could be any number of things, right? You've been seeing in the news natural gas. We've got abundance of natural gas in the Bakken. We could see some new natural gas resources. Natural gas is also a fossil fuel. There's emissions to deal with. With these CO2, these permitted CO2 storage fields we have out west, who knows? Project Tundra could maybe be used on a natural gas plant someday, on a new natural gas plant. Nuclear gets thrown around there, but nuclear is not a today or tomorrow solution. That's probably a 20 to 30 year solution. So really bottom line is if you look at the region today and the MISO market and what's providing power today, coal is still a huge part of that, and will continue to need to be until some of these other technologies are ready to take over. One of the best analogies I heard at an energy summit a while back was the kid on the jungle gym or the monkey bars, right? You can't let go of the bar you're on until you have a firm grasp on that next rung. And when we're talking about the wholesale power grid, if you don't and if you fall, that means the grid has fallen and you no longer have power for periods of time. So,
Who else has questions? Michael.
Do you have any projections for storage?
For Project Tundra? No.
Or any kind of energy storage, it goes well with wind and solar to even out some of the
Yep, there's storage. We're actually, I have it in a future slide here. We actually got a pilot project, small scale around battery storage. And typically today when you're talking storage, that's what you're talking about, lithium ion batteries. There again, there's pros and cons to those too. Typically, lithium ion batteries for storage, utility scale. You know, they might be good for a short 2 to 3 to 4 hour peak period, but we have periods over the winter and, you know, where we need a couple days worth of storage, and that takes a lot of batteries, and there's an environmental impact of batteries too, between the mining and the processing, and they have a life. You can only charge or discharge them so many times. So there's a lot of things in play here, and that's why we just got to take, I think, a balanced, common sense approach to this to make sure we're not sacrificing that grid reliability and affordability.
Thanks. Who else? Anybody else? All right, this is good. We're getting interaction before you're even near done.
No, I like the conversation. I'd rather visit than sit here and PowerPoint you to death, so keep them coming. So again, that slide kind of tied in that demand response system. So we do have incentives for putting some of these loads on the off-peak system. $25 per kW for your traditional electric heat, $45 per kW if you start talking now storage heat. So like floor heat, for example, where you got the concrete and the sand mass that can hold on to that thermal energy when we're controlling. And the heat pumps, $150 per ton for an air source heat pump and $250 for a ground source heat pump, or essentially geothermal. So they're kind of double, right? They're off-peak rebates and really energy efficiency rebates.
Are those annual?
It's a one-time, basically based on the size of the system that you install.
One time.
Yep, that's the rebate. But then in turn, you also get for putting on the off-peak system the discounted energy rate, which is perpetual going forward, which is about half of the firm rate. Same thing for the water heaters. I already talked about the battery in the basement. We give rebates for water heaters that are 100 gallons or greater, just because we want that extra thermal storage so that we can control them or shut them down during peak times without inconveniencing the homeowner. So with a 100-gallon tank, we turn that off during peak times. You shouldn't even notice you have 100 gallons of hot water before it becomes an issue. Electric vehicles, not necessarily new anymore, but we got a few options for them. One, if you buy an EV, you can do nothing, pay the firm rate, charge whenever you want to charge. If you want to save a little bit of money, there's two options. You can go on our newly created time of day rate, which I'll talk about more on the next slide, or you can go on our traditional off-peak rate that requires a sub-meter and then physical control of that charger where we can shut it off during peak times. And I know MetroCog is a big part of this group as well. You saw some of the projections. The state of North Dakota just crossed the 1,000 EV threshold here in 2024. MetroCog's projecting we could have 11,000 to 18,000 by 2035. It's been growing. It's been kind of a slow and steady growth. Like I said, time will tell. We'll see where this whole EV market goes. But why we want to get ahead of it, or why we have these programs for the peak charging or the off-peak charging. So our time of day rate, we had a pilot project for a while to see what worked best, what our rates needed to be. It was officially approved by our board in January of 2024. So this is kind of a mix of the two, the off-peak and the firm rate. There's no control. You can charge whenever you want to charge, but the price is going to vary. So as long as you charge during off-peak times when the demand for electricity is low, the rate's 5.2 cents per kilowatt hour. If you want to charge in that 4 to 8 p.m. window or that 6 to 9 a.m. window, which are traditionally peak times, it's going to be at just over 22 cents per kilowatt hour. So with these EVs today and the technology, and you can program these cars to basically tell them when you can plug it in and the car will manage when it charges. So they're a good fit for a time of use rate like this. We have a number of electric chargers in the metro area here that Cass County Electric sponsored. We did our first one at the West Acres Mall in 2016. Sanford Hospital has 4 chargers. Hornbachers has a charger over in West Fargo off Cheyenne Street. We have one on the side of our headquarters and actually at our service centers too, at Arthur, Kindred, Valley City, and Lisbon, and then at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now those are all level 2 chargers, the 7.5 kW, slightly slower charge, something like what you'd have in your garage. Those are all free to use. They're paid for basically by those entities. They're on their electric meter. And then in 2020, using some of the Volkswagen settlement dollars, we installed 3 DC fast chargers. They're 62.5 kW charge point chargers. That's the picture there you're seeing on the slide. So these are actually pay to charge chargers. They sit at West Acres Mall, Hornbacher's over in West Fargo, and then again at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have 4 EVs in our fleet. We purchased a Chevy Bolt and a plug-in hybrid Mitsubishi Outlander in 2018. In 2022, we added the Ford F-150 Lightning, and most recently in 2024, we got the Chevy Silverado. And you can see the different battery sizes or battery capacity on those vehicles and their corresponding range. Different projects we've done throughout the community throughout the years. In 2019, we partnered with West Fargo Schools and came up with some funding to get the first electric school bus in the state. That bus, actually just talked to their transportation director earlier today, it just completed its 6th school year. So it's been a successful project. It's also been a lot of learning with that project. There's been a lot of lessons learned and pros and cons with that bus. The electric bikes for the parks, this I think actually started with Dave and I visiting. We came up with funding for an electric police bike that could be used by the Fargo PD to patrol our area parks. And just most recently, it just arrived here, again, another Park District project. We sponsored electric Verticat, which is basically a handicap accessibility cart that you can use for sporting events, for golf, or for softball, or what have you. So, again, just that commitment to community. We're dedicated to giving back to these communities that we serve. And along those same lines, we have a My Co-op Cares program. If you go on our website, you can find this My Co-op Cares, and there's actually a form you can fill out. So if you have a community or nonprofit project that needs some manpower, you can apply, and if it kind of fits our criteria that I just discussed, we will send 10, 20 employees to volunteer at that event to help you with whatever project you have. We've done things from cleaning up Fort Ransom State Park, helping the city of Arthur clean up their parks and community cleanup days. We moved stuff out of the Fort Ransom Historical Society so they could do a renovation, took everything out of there and put it in storage. Cass County Electric matches employees giving Heart Stay donations. We make a number of donations to areas, Dollars for Scholars for high school scholarships, college scholarships. So Valley Senior Services is another one. Every month we have a group of employees that does Meals for Wheels deliveries. So again, just another way that Cass supports the community. Infinity program. This is a program that's available for any member that wants renewable energy. We have a few commercial accounts that utilize this program to meet their corporate environmental goals. Essentially what this is you pay a little bit more per kilowatt hour and we allocate the usage to those Minn Kota wind farm resources. It allows you to take advantage and promote or encourage renewables if you're unable or unwilling to do them yourself. There's some homes that can't put solar on their roof, for example, or maybe you don't have the financial resources to make that upfront investment. This is just another option for our members that want renewable energy. Prairie Sun Solar, this was the first community solar project in the state, just down kind of by Deer Creek off 52nd Avenue. Again, partnered with the city of Fargo for the land lease. It's a 102 kW solar array. We own it, we maintain it, but our members can buy a panel, and whatever that panel produces, they get as a credit on their electric bill every month.
Is this where the question or conversation of net metering comes in? I just hear it, people say it's relative to how much you get versus how much you put into the system, and
yeah, so net billing and net metering would be more if you're putting solar on your house. This kind of avoids that conversation because it's not at your house. It's a separate generation facility that you're just getting the energy off of. So net metering, essentially, you put solar on, there's times where your home is not using as much as that solar array is producing. So in a net metering scenario, you're spinning that meter backwards, you're pushing that energy out to the grid, which it's not stored, it's used and consumed at the moment it's produced. So really what you're getting with a net metering scenario is you're spinning it backwards so you're getting full retail rate for that, which in my opinion is not the most fair and equitable way to do it because full retail rate contains all of our hard costs, fixed costs, infrastructure. Net billing, which is what Cass County Electric has, there's a forward register and there's a reverse register. So whatever you consume off the grid is on the forward register. Whatever your solar array overproduces gets recorded on that register, the reverse register. And then you get reimbursed for the average cost of wholesale power on that reverse register. So now you're just paying for that energy or that avoided energy purchase, not for the full retail rate that contains all of our hard costs. It's just a way to make sure that your neighbor is not subsidizing your solar array, essentially.
How long does that credit last?
Prairie Sun Solar?
Yeah.
This is a 20-year project, so it'll be 2036 actually when it comes to the end of its 20 years. We'll see what kind of shape that solar array is in, what it's still producing. There's a chance it gets extended. Decisions to be determined yet, but with this contract for everybody that signed up, it's basically a 20-year guarantee. And then decisions to be made at that time. I mentioned this briefly. We're currently experimenting with a Tesla Powerwall 3. You can see a picture of it there with the cover off or the hood open, if you will. We bought this to play with and really to see what we can learn. We want to test a few things with it. We want to see how we can communicate with it, how we can basically tell it to discharge if there's a grid event or if we're in a time of peak demand. We want to play with it from an emergency backup standpoint. How long can we power this home as a backup generator if we kill the power? How does it ride through different blinks if we induce those blinks? What is it doing for power quality, for power filtering? And then the economic side. How does this work on our time of day rate? Can we program this thing to charge during off-peak times and discharge during peak times? And really, this is all meant to educate not only ourselves, but our members. You know, these things are growing in popularity. We do have a number of them on our system. And when you look at the stats, you know, one battery pack in and of itself, 11.5 kW discharge, that's not a big load. But if we start seeing these things grow, the scale of it, you know, there could be a benefit here, and it may be something Cass County Electric ultimately wants to incentivize, provide a rebate for, or maybe even build, you know, a potential rate around something like this. So we're very early in the project, but it kind of goes back to Mike's scale. Pieces like this will be part of the energy picture going forward. So we want to be as educated as we can on these systems. Recently reached out to Bruce on this one. We're looking at doing a pollinator habitat on our property off 32nd Avenue. We've been working with the city and United Prairie Foundation and Cass County Soil Conservation. So we have, it's roughly 70,000 square feet. That's kind of a floodwater retention area. We plan on taking out the turf and basically planting a mix of wildflowers and native prairie grasses for the environmental benefits. State energy program, something Cass County Electric does every single day, is help our members use less energy and really conservation. We always say we're one of the few industries out there that works for you to use less of our product. Number of entities on there, some of them in the room here, again, working with Dave, took advantage of that state energy program, came up with some funding for LED lighting. Northern Cass Schools, Family Wellness, we did some VFD pumps on their pool pumps to save energy. Bethany Homes, LED lighting, Gethsemane Church parking lot lighting, and YMCA LED lighting. All these grants on here can be used for any energy efficiency measure you have. They just need to meet a 10-year payback period or better. So that's why you really see a lot of LED projects with these. It's really a slam dunk for these dollars. So I'm not going to go into details on each one. Has slightly different hooks, slightly different requirements, slightly different funding and match requirements, but all three of these would be available for really anyone in this room here, the schools, the parks, the city.
Did I know the state, I believe the state was exploring opportunities to extend that payback term, or at least staff were, right? Because it's getting harder and harder to meet those requirements, even with LED lighting, because most of the times a lighting project also includes the controls, right, in different aspects. So now your payback period it gets a bit longer as those systems get more and more complicated. Has there been any update or change on that over the last year or so?
I haven't heard that they're looking at extending that, but for the reasons you said, James, it could make sense. And even for entities like the parks, we've, and the schools, we've gotten some of the low-hanging fruit already. So when you look for that next step, that payback can get a little more challenging.
We've got a lot of condensing lighting we could.
This was also the state energy program, James, that we worked with Fargo schools and got all those e-gauges purchased back when Jim Free was in your role. So. And with that, I just got to end on a safety message. Again, it's number one in our line of work, not only safety for our employees, but for our members and for the general public. Call 811 48 hours before you dig. Stay away from any downed power lines. Assume everything is energized. If you notice any problems out there in the field, just stay away and call us right away. So safety, always got to end on that safety message. With that, I'm happy to visit any more about anything I covered, or if anybody's got any questions.
Anybody have any feedback or questions? It's really interesting.
There's, if you get a chance to flip through this too, there's more information on some of the topics I covered as well. So.
Anybody else at all? Thank you very much, Chad. That was just terrific. All right, Bruce, we'll let you introduce the next topic.
And the next item, I recently was talking with Becky Majerus, our Director of Facilities here, and I asked her what she was doing, and she quite literally responded, I'm working on an RFP for a maintenance management program. And if I misspeak what this actually is, you can correct me. But I found that really interesting because it seems like it will help us to potentially become more efficient, extend the life possibly of mechanical items and equipment, and along the way potentially save energy as well. So I asked her if she would mind just giving us a very quick background on this new technology that she's pursuing to utilize here in the city of Fargo. Is that fair, Becky?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to step back just a little bit. Last fall, we received the EECBG voucher for just under $177,000. When we submitted our application, we submitted it with 3 projects. And the first one was a rooftop unit for municipal court, which that is just changing out to newer equipment, which is going to be more energy efficient. That was actually completed last week. So we've completed that piece of it. And another project that we had was potentially putting window tinting around City Hall to reduce the solar gain so that our air conditioning costs go down. And then the third one was this CMMS program, or Computerized Maintenance Management System. Just because of costs and some changes, we probably won't be getting to the window tinting, but that was probably the least of the sustainability projects. It probably has the least amount of return on investment. So as I said, the rooftop unit in municipal court has been changed out. So we should see some energy efficiencies with that. And as Bruce said, I was working on an RFP for a computerized maintenance management system. So what a computerized maintenance management system, it's a very, very helpful tool in facilities. It helps us manage all of our assets within the building. So electrical, HVAC, plumbing, any of those components are large assets. It helps us manage them better. It's computerized. It will tell you when your preventive maintenance needs to be taken care of. We are working with a company called FM360, and literally all that they do is work with organizations to select the right CMMS system and implement it for the organization. It's an amazing deal because you can imagine with the city of Fargo and the number of buildings that they have, we have a lot of assets that we would need to upload into a new system. So a couple weeks ago, I'll back up. So we've been working with FM360 to develop the scope for this RFP. The RFP was put out about 2 weeks ago, And it has 25 pages of requirements that we are hoping to get out of this system. So tracking methods, things like our techs being able to work off of a mobile phone, being able to contact our contractors directly to come out and do preventive maintenance. So we worked on that, and concurrently, he sent his team out, and they went through 25 of our buildings and tagged all of our large assets with QR codes. So going forward, once the system is in place, our techs can go out, they can scan the QR code, and they'll be able to document the work that they do. They'll be able to pull up manuals that tell them, okay, this is what preventive maintenance needs to be done. So if they need to check the O&M manuals. And so he sent his crew out. They tagged all of these assets for us over the course of a week. And they are back loading it into kind of a sample system or a test system while we have this RFP out for the actual system, the actual CMMS system. So we should be going through initial selections. Right now, we've seen about 20 companies that have pulled down the RFP to respond. We don't know if all of them will respond, but we've got a good selection that we'll be able to go through. Once we've selected the system we're going to go with, they will be able to immediately upload that information and also help us tweak anything in that system that we want that would be more customized for the city of Fargo. And let's see, what else? They will also be putting in the preventive maintenance that is recommended by the manufacturers. So they'll be setting the pace of when our preventive maintenance on each piece of equipment needs to happen so that we'll be meeting industry recommendations. And that's important because if you are maintaining those recommendations, your equipment is going to last longer. I mean, think about at home. If you don't change your filters on your furnace, you're reducing the life of your furnace, right? That goes for any of our facilities assets as well. So they're going to be setting up these preventive maintenance schedules. Additionally, when they were out here, they did a high-level facility condition assessment on those 25 buildings. So we will have an idea of where all of our buildings are at as far as their condition. And the other piece of this, the really big piece that I'm super excited about is it's going to give us an idea of when things need to be replaced. So we know ahead of time and we can budget for these a lot better, keep our capital costs a lot more flat versus 1 year you're spending millions and the next year you spend 100,000. So this will help us even out our costs. And overall, a CMMS system on average can save anywhere from 25 to 40% in your costs on your facility assets over the life of the assets and as well as replacement. So not only is it cost effective, it is definitely energy efficient because we know when it's going to meet its optimum performance, and when it starts to decline, that system is going to tell us, okay, we're spending too much, this is no longer energy efficient, now is the time to replace. So it's a very robust asset management system for facilities. I am super excited, love talking about this, and it's definitely time for the city to have this.
Is this new AI technology, or does that even become part of this process?
There is definitely AI components, but this is a technology that's been around for at least 20 years. Some companies have adopted it earlier. We are a little behind the curve getting our CMMS system because everything is on paper right now or Excel spreadsheets. So this is taking it to the next level. And is going to save so much time for our techs. It's going to save us time from building our budgets because we can run reports out of this system and it'll tell us, okay, here's what you need to budget over the next 10 years. So we'll be able to look forward a lot better.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As Becky was telling me this story, I was reminded of a saying made famous by Commissioner Mike Williams at the time, that if you can track it, you can manage it. Gotta track it.
We're courting you a lot today.
We, at the school district, we went through a similar process recently. In the summer of '23, we did a pretty comprehensive facility condition assessment, took all that data, put it in a new CMMS system. And two of the biggest challenges, a lot of our technicians and even people we contract with or people that are in-house who have all this institutional knowledge of your systems and, whether it's mechanical or what have you, are aging out and retiring, and you bring new people in. And if you don't have that information that's up here right now in a system like a CMMS, it's gone, and you lose a ton of, of your effectiveness of your staff and people you contract with. So it's such an important thing to do. The other part, you mentioned AI. Today, AI, there's a lot of things in development and there's opportunity there. And I could talk all day about some of the cool things that might be coming with that. But the key to leveraging that when the technology is there, which is probably in the next few years, is having clean, consistent data. And in facilities, it's really rare that a large system has clean, reliable, up-to-date data. So the steps that Becky is taking are huge in even potentially leveraging those types of technological updates, because if you have garbage data and you put an AI on top of it, you're still going to get garbage results. But if you've got, well organized and accurate information, then you're poised to leverage that in the hopefully pretty near future. So it's pretty cool. And the things that are coming along with predictive analytics. So a lot of these systems, when you put a new rooftop unit in or controls, that type of stuff, right? These systems have a lot of opportunity where they'll notice, say, a change in the power draw of a unit, and it can tell you that based on what it knows about those types of irregularities, it's 75% this is the issue with that unit, and your technician knows to get there with these tools. It's 20% this, 5% this, right? And those possibilities are already in a lot of the hardware that's out there, but it's putting it all together in a way that is manageable by the staff. That is, steps like this are how you get there and how you can get to a more proactive maintenance program as opposed to a reactive, which means less disruption. It means better energy efficiency. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So kudos to Becky and team for making this a priority.
Yeah, and like I said, we've been working with this consultant, FM360, and, we're looking at having this implemented before the end of the year. So it's a very quick turnaround. And the only reason that that is possible is because we have this consultant that's doing this end-to-end services. We're paying a little bit for it, but we have this grant. This is the perfect time to do it. If I had to send my team around, and we have a very lean team, if I had to send my team around to find all this information from all of these assets, we'd be looking probably 2-3 years to implement, because it doesn't take priority over taking care of the equipment. So we really got lucky to find this particular consultant. They're very passionate about what they do, and they're going to walk through it with us. They're going to complete the training with us. And they're going to be on board for at least a couple years. We can always renew with them, but they'll be on board to offer support throughout this whole process and beyond.
Anybody else have anything? It's really something I'm paying attention to the resources around our table. And just if we can tap into what we all do in our real lives and share it with the community, it's just great today what we're putting out there for everybody to know what you're doing. And I wouldn't have known anything what you're talking about. And then to see James get all excited. You picked the right topic. There you go. It's like I put a quarter in James. Here we go. Anybody else? Great, thank you very much.
I have something to
Go ahead,
say.
Greta.
I often don't have much to contribute, but I just really want to express my gratitude at being part of this committee, because I learned so much about what you all are doing. And I do go out into the community and tell people what's going on. This is just so fascinating. I mean, it makes perfect sense once you talk about it, but I never knew such a thing even existed. So it's great.
Good feedback, Greta, thank you. Anybody else? I don't believe, Sean, are you, if you're still online, if you have any questions, just get our attention.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm still here. Nothing. I have nothing this time.
I'm impressed you're still there. Thank you. I don't believe we have any public comment to sign up, and anything else for the good of the order today? You all know, you don't all maybe know, but we're, at the city level, we're really reevaluating many of our boards and our commissions and our futures, and we're wrestling with these topics for efficiencies. The SRC committee is one of the committees in the balance as to what our future is, and there's pros and cons of what we do and where we go in the future, but just kind of keep an eye on that. We'll keep you apprised on that. It's such a different dynamic these days. And all that so financing priorities are prevailing in every regard. And so we'll keep you posted, but there's a chance that this discussion will unfold further. It will unfold, and we'll know more as we go forward. I know Bruce and others are advocating just exactly what Greta is saying. There's so much value to just what we share. You know, it's not like we're initiating policies and directing change across the community, but we have a chance to interact and share, and there's value to that. But we also take department heads out of their jobs and put them around the table, and so this is just unfolding. I don't want to pretend it's not the reality the city is dealing with. The SRC committee, and even, well, I don't want to get too political here, but I don't even dare say the word sustainable anymore. or I might get deported. I don't know. Mike.
Mr. Chairman, it reminds me of Tom Cruise, show me the money. And so Becky's going to show us the money by all the money that you save. The best money you can ever make is the money you don't spend. And so if we can save 30-40% on maintenance of these buildings, that makes it worthwhile just by itself. Yep.
It really is.
Conservation is conservative.
Mm-hmm. Anything else for the good of the order? Now we'll stand adjourned, and thanks everybody very, very sincerely.